Revenge with Anjo.
The wine burned like fire down Clara Monroe's throat as she tried to steady her hands. Across the long mahogany table, Edward Langford's voice cut through the clinking of silverware. "My son deserves better than a woman from the gutter," he announced. The laughter of his country club friends filled the silence that followed, brittle and cruel. Clara's nails dug crescents into her palms. "Street charity in designer heels," he added, pretending to belong. 20 pairs of eyes turned to her, waiting for the spectacle. She folded her napkin with care, placed it beside her untouched salmon, and rose. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. Langford," she said calmly. "And thank you for being honest." Her boyfriend, Mason, reached for her hand. "Clara, don't." "It's fine, love," she said softly. "Your father's right. I should know my place." She smiled, poised and unbroken, while Edward's smirk widened in triumph. He thought he'd won. He hadn't. Clara walked out through the grand hallway, past the Monet painting, the marble stairs, the staff who avoided her eyes. She passed the Langford family's Bentley and reached her modest Audi. Mason followed, voice trembling. "Clara, I'm so sorry. I didn't know he'd say that." She turned, brushing a tear from his cheek. "This isn't on you," she whispered. "He just said what he's always thought." "I'll make him apologize," Mason said. "No," she replied, her voice firm. "No more apologies for him. He showed us who he is." She opened her car door, paused, and looked back. "He can't ruin what's real. I'll call you tomorrow." Mason nodded helplessly as she drove off, watching the mansion lights fade behind her like stars she'd never need again. Her phone buzzed before she reached the main road. Calls from Mason's mother, calls from the PR assistant, all ignored. Clara's reflection in the rear-view mirror was calm. Too calm. When she reached the city, she hit her Bluetooth. "Alexa, call Natalie." Her assistant's voice came through instantly. "Ms. Monroe? It's late. Everything okay?" "Cancel the Langford Capital merger," Clara said flatly. Silence. "Ma'am? The $1.8 billion deal? We're set to sign Monday." "Cancel it. Tonight." Natalie hesitated. "But the penalty clauses—" "I don't care," Clara interrupted. "Send the termination notice to their legal team before midnight. Cite irreconcilable corporate values." "What happened?" Natalie asked softly. Clara's tone hardened. "He called me trash. At his dinner table. In front of everyone." Natalie's voice dropped to a growl. "Then let's remind him who he just insulted." Clara smiled faintly. "Not yet. Let him sleep on it first." By the time Clara pulled into her high-rise garage, her inbox was exploding. Langford Capital's CFO, Graham Peters, had already called twice. She ignored him, poured herself a glass of scotch, and walked onto her balcony overlooking Manhattan. "Let the king of old money have his sleepless night," she murmured. Beneath her calm was a storm. Edward Langford thought she was some social climber dating his son for status. He didn't know that the tech company Langford Capital was desperate to merge with Monroe Systems belonged entirely to her. He thought she was a consultant, a face, a clever nobody. He had no idea she'd built a billion-dollar empire from the ground up. For years, she had stayed invisible, letting men like Edward underestimate her. That was her favorite strategy, being unseen until it was too late. At 2:03 a.m., her phone rang again. Graham Peters, Langford Capital. The screen read. She sighed and answered. "Mr. Peters." "Clara, there must be a mistake. We just got a termination notice from Monroe Systems." "No mistake." "But we're signing Monday," he protested. "The shareholders." "Then you should have advised your CEO not to publicly humiliate his potential business partner," she said evenly. There was silence, then a slow, horrified whisper. "What did Edward do?" "Ask him," she replied. "Good night, Mr. Peters." She hung up, closed her laptop, and watched the city lights blink in satisfaction. By morning, the business press was on fire. Monroe Systems withdraws from Langford merger. Market shock. $1.8 billion deal collapses overnight. Natalie called as Clara ate breakfast. "Bloomberg wants a statement," she said. "Give them this," Clara replied. Monroe Systems has decided to pursue partnerships more aligned with our company's values. Natalie chuckled. Vague and devastating. I like it. She hesitated. Also, Edward Langford is downstairs. What? He showed up 20 minutes ago. Security stopped him. He's shouting. Clara sipped her coffee. Send him up. But make him wait in conference room B. How long? 40 minutes, Clara said. The chairs in B are uncomfortable. Natalie laughed. You're evil. No, Clara replied. Just done. When Clara finally entered the conference room, Edward Langford was standing by the window, looking older and smaller than he had the night before. His suit was rumpled, his pride shattered. Thank you for seeing me, he said. 5 minutes, Clara replied, sitting without shaking his hand. I apologize for last night, he began. My words were inappropriate. Inappropriate. Clara laughed coldly. You call me gutter trash in front of your friends. I was drunk, he said quickly.
No.
You were honest.
His jaw tightened.
What do you want? An apology? You have it. Now, let's finalize the merger. Clara raised an eyebrow. Why would I do business with someone who disrespects me? Because it's business, not personal. You made it personal, she said. Now I'm just returning the courtesy. She stood and walked to the window. You researched me, didn't you? He nodded cautiously. Then you know about the foster homes, the part-time jobs, the scholarships. You saw where I came from, but not where I was going. She turned sharply. Do you know why Monroe Systems thrives? Because I remember being hungry. Because I remember being ignored. Edward's face flushed. We have good products, he said defensively. You have privilege, Clara corrected. Look at your board. Any member who didn't go to Cambridge or Yale. Any executive who wasn't born rich. He said nothing. That's why this merger is dead. Not because you insulted me, but because your company stands for everything I built mine to destroy. Edward sank into his chair. Without this merger, Langford Capital won't survive the year. Then maybe it shouldn't, Clara said quietly. She walked to the door, pausing only once. Maybe it's time for your empire to crumble so better people can build something real from its dust. What about Mason? He said suddenly. You're destroying his future. Clara turned. Mason doesn't need to inherit power. He can create his own. That's the difference between us. You see inheritance as destiny. I see it as a cage. His lips tightened. He'll never forgive you. Clara smiled faintly. Then, at least one of us will sleep clean tonight. When Clara entered her private office, Natalie handed her a coffee and a smirk. Fairchild Technologies wants a meeting Monday, she said. They heard about the breakup. Good, Clara said. Make sure Edward finds out by lunch. Natalie grinned. Already leaked. She hesitated. Also, Mason's here. Clara froze. He's waiting. An hour now, Natalie said gently. He looks heartbroken. Clara took a breath and opened the door. Mason was sitting at her desk, eyes red but steady. He stood when she entered. Hi, he said softly. Hi, she replied. I heard what you told my father. Did you? Yes, he said, voice trembling. And you were right. I've been a coward. Clara frowned. Mason, no, listen, he said, stepping closer. I let him treat you like that. I made excuses. I thought it would get better. It never does. His hand found hers. I'm ashamed of him, of me. I benefited from everything he took for granted. What are you saying? Clara whispered. I'm saying I'm done, he said. With his money, his name, his rules. I want to build something real with you. Clara searched his face. You'd give it all up? He smiled sadly. You just killed $1 billion deal because my father disrespected you. I think we'll survive. She laughed despite herself. I love you, Mason. Even if you've declared corporate war on my family, especially because of that. Their laughter filled the quiet office, warm and fragile. The phone buzzed. Natalie's voice crackled through the speaker. Ms. Monroe, the Langford board is calling an emergency meeting. Rumor is they're considering removing Edward as CEO. Mason blinked. You're going to take his company? No, Clara said. I'm going to give them a choice. Evolve or perish. Within hours, the financial world buzzed like a hive. Clara's calm statement had been dissected on every business channel. Edward Langford sat in his office watching headlines scroll, Monroe Systems pulls plug, Langford future in doubt. His executives whispered outside his door, afraid to enter. At the same time, Clara's assistant forwarded her a message from an anonymous insider, emergency board meeting, noon. She smiled. He won't go quietly, Mason warned. He doesn't know how. Then we'll teach him, Clara said. Respect is a currency he never learned to trade. The Langford board gathered in their glass tower overlooking Park Avenue. Tension hung like smoke. Our CEO's behavior has jeopardized a billion-dollar merger, Director Wells said sharply. And he hasn't issued a public apology. Edward clenched his fists. You'd all sell your souls to that woman. That woman, Wells replied, owns what we need. Phones buzzed. Someone read a live update. Fairchild Technologies in talks with Monroe Systems. Gasps. Edward's face drained of color. She's moving to our rival? No, the chairman said quietly. She's already there. Edward stormed into Clara's building without an appointment. Natalie met him at the elevator. Mr. Langford, Ms. Monroe is in meetings. Move. She said you'd say that. Natalie replied coolly. When Clara finally appeared, dressed in charcoal gray and calm as winter steel, he pointed a trembling hand. You're destroying everything I built. No, she said, stepping close enough for him to smell her perfume. You destroyed it when you mistook cruelty for power. His jaw tightened. Do you have any idea who I am? Yes, Clara said softly. A man who just learned money can't buy grace. That evening, Monroe Systems released a short video clip. Clara, poised behind her desk, said, Integrity must outweigh inheritance. We choose partners who understand both. The clip went viral overnight. Thousands of comments praised her composure. Meanwhile, Edward's investors demanded accountability. His PR firm begged for a counterstatement, but every sentence sounded hollow. She's turned you into a villain, Mason's sister texted. Edward stared at the screen showing Clara's calm smile. She turned the mirror, he muttered. By Friday morning, Langford Capital stock had fallen 18%. Edward's board froze his authority pending investigation. Outside his office, reporters swarmed. Mason arrived quietly, looking tired but resolute. Dad, the board's voting today, he said. Edward looked up, eyes bloodshot. You came to watch them hang me? No, Mason answered. I came to tell you I'm done covering for you. Edward's voice cracked. She'll ruin us both. No, Dad, Mason said softly. You did that yourself. At Monroe headquarters, Clara listened as Natalie read headlines. Langford ousted in emergency vote. Board appoints interim CEO. Clara leaned back, exhaling. Send them flowers, she said. White lilies. Petty or poetic? Natalie teased. Both. She turned to Mason. You okay? He nodded. He'll hate me forever. Then you're free, she said gently. Sometimes freedom costs a father's approval. That afternoon, the new Langford interim chair requested a meeting. In the conference suite, the atmosphere was tense but respectful. Ms. Monroe, the chair began. We recognize past mistakes. We'd like to reopen discussions under new leadership. Clara exchanged a glance with Mason. We'll consider a partnership, she said. Not a merger. Terms? Equal footing, equal voice, and public acknowledgement of what went wrong. The board nodded. For the first time, Langford Capital looked humble. Later that evening, Mason found Clara on her balcony, overlooking the city. You could have destroyed them, he said. Why show mercy? She smiled faintly. Because revenge is a moment. Legacy lasts longer. He slipped his arms around her. You're incredible. No, she whispered. I'm disciplined. The city glittered beneath them, cold, bright, and full of promise. Monday morning, the media assembled at Monroe's lobby. Cameras flashed as Clara and the Langford board walked out side by side. Today, Clara announced, 2 companies start over with shared purpose and mutual respect. A reporter shouted, "Ms. Monroe, are you and Mason Langford still together?" She smiled slightly. "Some partnerships are personal. Those remain private." Mason winked from the sidelines. Twitter exploded. Edward watched the broadcast from his townhouse, curtains drawn. Rachel, his wife, poured coffee. "They handled it gracefully," she murmured. He scowled. "She humiliated me." "No, Edward," Rachel said quietly. "You did that when you called her garbage." For once, he had no retort. He stared at the blank television screen, realizing silence was the only thing left that belonged to him. Over the next month, Clara poured herself into work. Monroe Systems and Langford Capital co-launched an initiative to fund underrepresented entrepreneurs. It made headlines again, but this time for the right reasons. "Do you ever miss the chaos?" Natalie asked one night. Clara smiled.
Sometimes.
But peace feels expensive enough to keep. 6 months later, on a misty April evening, Mason knelt in the garden of the Gramercy Hotel. "Clara Monroe," he said, voice shaking, "you turned my world upside down and somehow made it right side up. Will you marry me?" She laughed, tears bright as the fairy lights around them. "You're proposing with the press watching from across the street." "Let them," he said. "They've seen worse scandals." "Then yes," she whispered. Rachel visited them a week later. The air was awkward but hopeful. "He still won't speak to you," she admitted. "But he's watching your interviews." Clara nodded. "Maybe time will soften him." Rachel squeezed her hand. "You remind me of the woman I used to be, before his world consumed me." "Then take some of it back," Clara said. For the first time in years, Rachel smiled like she meant it.
A
Financial magazine asked Clara for a feature titled From Gutter to Boardroom.
She refused.
"Why?" Natalie asked. "It's great PR." "Because I was never in the gutter," Clara replied. "I was just underground, planting seeds." The quote went viral anyway. Young entrepreneurs printed it on posters, mugs, and startup walls. One night, Clara woke to find Mason pacing by the window. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Fairchild offered me a solo project. They want me to lead it in Singapore." She hesitated, then smiled. "Then go. And us. We built this relationship on freedom, remember? Bring back stories, not apologies." He hugged her tightly. "You make it impossible to love small." 3 months later, Mason returned, tanned, exhausted, and carrying a small velvet box. "I saw the sun rise over the Pacific and realized something," he said. "What?" "That no horizon's wide enough without you." She kissed him before he could open the box. "Welcome home," she whispered. Years later, Monroe Langford Innovations became a model of ethical business. Their scholarship fund supported thousands of students from low-income backgrounds. At each ceremony, Clara reminded them, respect isn't inherited. It's earned. And once you earn it, protect it. Mason always stood beside her, proud and quiet, his father sitting in the back row, older, humbled, applauding softly. Clara often thought back to that first dinner, the sting of wine, the taste of humiliation, the glint in Edward's eyes. She smiled at the memory now, not from bitterness, but gratitude. That night had been her crucible. Without it, she might never have learned the cost of dignity or the value of silence. On their 10th anniversary, as she raised her glass at another elegant dinner, she looked at Mason and whispered, "Here's to the ones who called us nothing." He smiled. "And to proving them right because we became everything." If you value stories of respect, dignity, and justice, please subscribe. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing the lessons life has carved into me.